Hey everyone, welcome to Co-Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Boston, and we have a very fun guest with us today. She is a veterinarian. Her name's Dr. Mansum Yau. I actually taught her in veterinary school. She graduated from the Ontario Veterinary College in Guelph in 2010. And when I asked her what I was like as a teacher, she remembered nothing. Taking it as a good sign, you guys. I don't know. No bad memories of me. Taking it as a win. All right. Don't think I changed her life, though. We're just saying she did not start on a path to become a surgical oncologist, but she is a comedian. She's an author, very passionate about educating pet parents about things that I think seem kind of simple to us as people that work in the veterinary industry, but are hard for pet parents. I think she can make a huge impact. We also had some technical difficulties. You might notice. Welcome, Dr. Mansum Yau. Thank you so much for being here on Co-Medicine. It's great to have you.
Thank you. It's my first podcast ever, so I'm really excited.
I always like to talk about everyone's origin stories, and usually that's their medical origin story, but I wanted to go even further back with you, because just looking at your bio, you were born in Hong Kong, you grew up in Syria and Lebanon, and then I don't know exactly when you came to Canada. I'd love to hear that, but you graduated as a veterinarian from the Ontario Veterinary College in 2010. Can you just tell us about that?
Yeah, I grew up in Syria and Lebanon before the war, before the explosion in Beirut. Feels like a lifetime ago. I consider myself a multicultural international person or an adult third culture kid, TCK for short. So that's a term that not many people know about. It's called third culture kid, even when you are grown up, because the first culture is technically your parents' culture. The second culture is a culture of the country that you're living in that's not the passport country. Sometimes there's more than one country that third culture kids grow up in. And then the third culture is a combination of the other cultures.
Is the third culture Canada or is the third culture Syria and Lebanon?
The third culture is just a combination of all the cultures I've been exposed to.
Oh, okay. Really, really interesting. So I have a good friend who is a veterinarian in Jordan, and this was before the war as well. He always told me, he's back in Jordan now, but he always told me that before the war in Syria, just what a beautiful country it was. And we wanted to go visit there because he told us about the gardens and the oranges and the fruit and just what a beautiful country it was. So what was your experience being there before the war and growing up there?
I liked it. The people were really friendly towards foreigners, at least. And I love the hospitality there. Like when they talk about hospitality, they're not kidding. Like they invite strangers into their homes and feed strangers. The food there is amazing. Like it's a part of me now, thankfully. I try to emulate that.
No, it's humbling. This was in New Zealand. I've been exposed to cultures where they literally, you can meet someone on a bus in New Zealand and they'll invite you to come over for dinner, stay at their house. And it made me feel a bit humbled because I don't know that I would ever do that. So I don't know if that's similar in Syria, that the people are just like, come on over. And yeah, it is humbling when you encounter a culture like that. I agree. All right. So what year did you move to Canada, and did you come here for veterinary school, or what brought you to the Ontario Veterinary College?
I actually moved to Canada when I was 17 for my undergrad. I started off on the East Coast in PEI, Prince Edward Island, and I got into both vet schools. I decided to go to the Ontario Veterinary College because it's an older school and more established, and that's the origin story.
Okay, and then you graduated in 2010. Now, we were there at the same time. I'm trying to think. I taught you. Were you ever on a rotation with me, or did I teach you just in the classroom?
I think you taught me in the classroom.
Okay.
Yeah, you're one of my professors.
Okay, that's cool. I feel better. I mean, it's hard because I've taught so many veterinary students, but I usually remember students I've worked like in those small groups with. But I felt bad when you were like, "Hey, you used to teach me," and I was like, "Oh." So I was like, "I probably just taught you in a lecture hall, I think."
Yeah, you taught me in the lecture hall, and I was painfully shy back then. Like I had social anxiety, debilitating social anxiety. So I actually prefer you remembering me as I am now and not back then.
Okay. Well, you weren't shy because you got in touch with me on socials, and great to meet you again. So you graduated in 2010, and then where did your career take you from there?
I worked in private practice, and I also worked in a shelter for a year.
Oh, cool.
I also worked at a corporate clinic in the States for 2 years. And then I moved back to Canada during COVID, and I worked at a cat clinic for a year, and now I'm back to being a locum. I was a
Okay.
locum before I moved to the States. Yeah, so
Okay.
locum is a relief vet who covers for other vets when they need time off.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what you're doing now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, I would say, your generation of veterinarian, and I dabbled in it as well. And I started doing locum work. So what is it about locum? I probably guessed, but what is it about locum work that you like?
I like the flexibility, the ability to meet new people. I like meeting new people. I also like seeing how different clinics do things. Like they all have their own individual quirks, and every clinic I go to, I learn something new.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, for me, the flexibility, I really love that. Especially when you're trying to do other things. I think it's really helpful to kind of like not kind of get stuck into a schedule and be able to have a little bit of freedom to travel and do other things. Okay. Well, that's really cool. So you're small. Are you feline or kind of both within small animal?
Cats and dogs and the occasional small mammal.
And you're in Vancouver?
I'm in
Sorry.
Vancouver.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So lots of opportunities for a locum there, I would imagine.
I'm mostly 3 clinics right now because once you work at enough clinics, you get a feel of which clinic you're comfortable at. And so,
Yeah. Perfect.
yeah.
Perfect. Do you do emergency work too or primary care?
I have done emergency work, covered some shifts at a 24-hour facility in Calgary before, but I don't currently do emergency work.
Yeah. I got less fun during COVID, I think, too. But it seems to me like it's settling out a little bit. It's not quite as wild as the COVID years in ER, at least I work at a referral hospital that has an emergency hospital. I don't do I do the emergency surgeries, I guess, but I don't do the frontline ER stuff. I have great respect for ER doctors.
Yeah. The last emergency shift I had, I remember 7 or 8 people crying in a row. One of them was happy tears, but the rest were all like really sad tears. And I remember thinking like, wow, like 7 or 8 people crying like back to back. It was, yeah.
And that was
Tough work.
clients.
Clients.
Crying,
Yeah,
yeah.
clients.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have stories of people crying for hours, not wanting to leave the emergency clinic. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought, see, because you could have said, sometimes it's the staff or the doctors crying too. So.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it was not the staff.
Yeah. It wasn't like stress crying. It was, people crying because they were sad about their pets. Yeah, no, that I actually experienced that just on Friday. I think I had like because I do cancer mostly. And so like I just had a run of clients that were crying, and it's challenging like, just seeing people so sad. So yeah, I need to break it up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, that's why I like comedy.
All right. Well, it's a good segue because
Yes.
me too. I agree. Okay. So when did you start, when did you realize this about yourself? When did you start getting into doing comedy?
I started 7 months ago, so I'm still very new at
All right.
it.
Cool.
And if you had told me 5 years ago or even 3 years ago, Mansum, one day you're going to do stand-up comedy, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have laughed at you.
So why? Because you said you were really shy. Why did you start doing comedy, and like what drew you to it, and how did you start doing comedy? Someone who's quite a shy person, who's I call us all nerds. I hope you're okay with that, but all the vets I know are nerds. We're nerds. So what made you decide to go, I think I'm gonna start doing stand-up?
There are 2 reasons why I got into stand-up comedy. One is I like writing jokes, and I've been writing jokes for my books. I have a book on cat carriers and another book on litter boxes, litter, and house soiling coming out. And I wanted to get better at writing jokes. There's not much information online about how to write jokes. It's not something that's taught in elementary school, high school, or university even. I also caught I like to call it the public speaking bug. I caught the public speaking bug on Instagram. I posted about cat carriers because it's something I'm very passionate about. Like I've seen so many people struggling to get their cats into a carrier or struggle to get the cats out of the carrier, like both clients as well as coworkers, cats getting so stressed out and getting injured in their carriers. And I just wanted to do something about it. Anyways, so I've been posting about cat carriers, and this company reached out to me and asked me like, oh, would you like to be on the panel of speakers? Like they asked another veterinarian and a technician and some other people to do like a virtual summit, and people from all over the world joined and asked questions about cats and going on adventures with a cat and all that. And after that experience, I was like, I actually really enjoyed that. I want to continue talking. So I started doing public speaking. I talked at a cat festival in Vancouver, also at a cat cafe, and I wanted to get better at public speaking. And I thought, oh, if I sign up for a stand-up comedy course, I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. Actually, it's a very negative phrase. I can feed 2 birds with 1 scone.
Okay, I love it. I love how you're talking problems too, because it makes me think of myself. Because I'm like, oh, there's classes for stand up. Oh, there's classes. It's like, let's get into it. Let's do it. So yeah, no, that actually makes perfect sense. I've met people, like I've done storytelling classes and stand up classes, and some of the people at improv classes, some of the people in the classes, they don't even want to do anything with it. They're just like, I'm scared
Hmm.
to public speak, and I just don't want to be scared of that anymore. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that's really cool. And like, if they get the bug for it, keep going with it. Awesome. If they're like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore, that's also totally fine. Okay, well, that's cool. So you took an in-person class for stand-up?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a comedy school in Vancouver called Blind Tiger Comedy. And it's a pretty small class of 10 people or less and one instructor. They have a stage in the classroom. So every class, like for 8 classes, like it's 8, I want to say 2.5 hour classes, like 8 weeks in a row with a 1 week break in the middle. And every class we had a talk on stage. So we got lots of practice and got to meet other people who love comedy or love public speaking or at least have a sense of humor. I highly recommend taking stand-up comedy courses or improv sketch if you want to meet other people who love that form of art.
Yeah, I loved it too, because when I've done classes like that, the veterinary community is wonderful, but it's, I don't know, I like meeting people that I never would have met otherwise, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like I found comedy, like I
Totally.
just interact with all these different walks of life. And as much as I love all my veterinary peeps, because I do, sometimes it's nice to just like someone who does something, you're like, well, what is that about? I've never even thought about that. So that's definitely something that comedy has brought for me. You're right. Well, meeting people who like to laugh from all
Mhm.
different parts. So you sent me a clip. It's a short little clip. We're going to go to it now.
Do you know what some people do when they see that you're upset? They stop listening. They point out other people's perspectives as if yours doesn't matter. And worst of all, they give unsolicited advice as if it'll make you feel better. I prefer animals that can't talk.
All right. Tell me about that joke.
So I wrote that joke after a period of hardship in my life, which, I mean, we all experience hardships, but whenever something happens, I think like, not funny right now, but I know that in a few weeks or in a month or in a few months, I'm going to write a joke about this. And then I feel better knowing that, it's comedic material for later, later in my life.
Yeah, always. I think that is the gift of comedy or writing jokes, is that, I don't know, I always think about that ability to recognize something and say, oh, this is terrible, but also kind of funny.
I was talking to someone about comedy and she watched my stand-up set and she's like, wow, you did trauma sorting in your set. Like you should call it trauma sorting.
Oh, I like that term. What does that
Yeah.
mean? What do you think that means?
I think it means processing my trauma. And, in the beginning, it was pretty awful. And then I was able to write a joke that made people laugh at the very end. And I was able to sort my trauma, sort my shit. Excuse my
Yeah.
language.
No, it's okay. You can swear on the podcast. We encourage it. We encourage it on co-medicine. No, I like that concept of trauma sorting. I'm just trying to think, how do I do that? But they do say, like, once you can laugh about something, it's kind of healed. Like you're kind of good, because you're able to kind of look at that and say, okay, that's not hurting me. I can see the humor in whatever it was that happened. Okay, and there also is a cartoon that you sent me. I think I'll put it on my Instagram if that's okay with you, so that people can
Definitely.
look at it while we're talking about it. But do you want to just explain what's happening with your cartoon?
Yeah, so it's technically a comic strip because there are 3 panels. So a cartoon usually is just one panel.
Oh,
This
okay.
has 3 panels, and
Yeah.
it's basically a knock-knock joke. In the first panel, there's someone struggling to get their cat into a carrier. So you just picture all these like scratch marks and nails. And someone knocks on the door, knock, knock, who's there? And it's a knight in shining armor called Sir Helps-a-Lot, there to help the person get their cat into the carrier. But yeah, I love this comic strip because it combines all my passions, like educating people about cat carriers, as well as drawing cartoons and writing jokes.
All right, that's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing it. We'll put it on Instagram so people can know. Although you described it pretty well, but we'll put it on Instagram so that people can see it and understand what we're talking about.
And there are more comic strips, more jokes in my book too about
Okay,
cat carriers.
awesome. How do people find your book?
So it's available on Amazon. Can also be ordered through your bookstore.
Perfect. We'll put the links in the show notes so people can find it easily, and then they can find you on Instagram. We'll put that link in there too. Okay, I want to talk about cat carriers more, because I need to admit, I have been a vet for a very long time, seen a lot of cat carriers. I love when someone is like no, this is a problem and I'm passionate about it and we need to tackle it. I don't think about it. I'm guilty of this. I don't think I've thought about it enough. So what are we doing wrong? What are veterinarians doing wrong? What do people need to know about cat carriers that you feel like you need to tell or teach people about?
Not necessarily veterinarians, but like the support staff. Like I've seen people just sticking their hand there, automatically scruffing the cat, pulling the cat out, like not even giving the cat a chance to come out on its own. And unfortunately, if you do that enough, the cat automatically, like I got bit once, like I barely even, like I opened the carrier door, barely even put my hand in, and like I got bit right away because that cat probably got scruffed multiple times and, and wanted to protect itself. And so I try to be gentle, like try to teach the younger staff members about the fear-free, cat-friendly way of handling cats. Yeah, so it's always better to let them come out on their own or to lift them out of care instead of just scruffing, pulling them out or dumping them out. And what the cat owners or cat parents could be doing differently is instead of just using zip ties or instead of using broken carriers, they could be getting better design carriers, because there are people who are still using carriers from the 1980s, like older than most of the staff working at vet clinics. The screws are all rusty or they're missing screws. The door's broken. I've seen people use chopsticks in the doors of cat carriers. I'm like, the cat could just push and then like out it runs out in the parking lot and it could be gone forever.
Okay.
And there's so many horror stories of cats escaping from their carriers too.
Okay, I love this. Okay, so I have to admit this. I don't have a cat right now. I'm a full cat person. I lost my cat a few years ago during COVID. But I saw, I think it was on Facebook Marketplace. It was one of those cat carriers that's like a backpack, but it's like a bubble. I wanted to buy it. And I had to remind myself, you don't have a cat. But I was
look
like,
really cool, don't they?
Oh my God, they're so cool. Are they good? What's your opinion on those?
It depends on the size of a cat. So a lot of them aren't wide enough for the cat to lie down comfortably in. If you have a Maine Coon, definitely wouldn't fit. Yeah, it depends on the size of your cat. Depends on how shy the cat is too, because if all your cat wants to do is hide and there's a clear bubble, yeah.
Okay, this is a very good point. I like to say that I keep cat because I like, I think there's a lot of things we can do in hospitals to make cats more comfortable, give them boxes to hide in and stuff like that. So, okay, the bubble carrier, not going to buy it. Also, don't have a cat. Hoping to get one soon. I don't have one right now. So,
yeah,
I don't need a carrier.
Yeah, there's so many different types of carriers now, so many different types. And I wrote about it in my book. And I want to raise more awareness because people are just used to like the older hard-sided type of carriers. And yeah, I also drew cartoons of carriers too.
So what carriers do people get? What should I get when I get my cat?
So there's multiple factors, like it depends on the size of the cat, depends on, whether or not you have like shoulder injuries, or it depends how heavy the cat is, depends on your lifestyle, on your budget.
Okay. Not one size fits all. That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
All right. Understood. I actually did just get rid of my it's not from the 80s, but I totally appreciate what you're saying. It's a very old cat carrier. I just got rid of it because I was like, nope. When I get my new cat, I'm going to get a new carrier. I'm going to read your book. I will select one for,
Yeah, because a lot of people with dogs crate train their dogs. People almost never carrier train their cats. So they stuff their cats into a carrier, get scratched or bit, and then, then they get mad at the vet when the vet can't touch the cat because the cat's, scratching, hissing, biting, and like poor cat's like so stressed in the carrier, and like I've just seen that so many times that I wanted to do something about it.
Yeah, no, I love it because I think we've come a long way with fear-free. Like when I was in vet school in my first 2 years of practice, there was a lot of scruffing cats and like making them lie on the table, and people and honestly in vet school, that's how you treat cats. Like we treated them like wild animals, and then everyone wondered why they were so bad at the vet. Fast forward 25 years, things are much better. I think we understand, give them drugs, relax them, don't be rough on a cat, because we are teaching them this will be horrible. You should probably fight, and that's what they do. But I haven't thought as much about taking it to the carrier and what people are doing at home and stuff. So I love when someone looks at a part of the problem that other people aren't looking at. So I think that is awesome. So you said you also do cartoons. Like I know you illustrate your books, but are you doing cartoons on their own, or is that just part of your books, or where are you at with cartooning?
For my books currently.
And you also are you doing writing like for your book, or is it separate writing projects that you're doing?
I wrote an article for one of the local vet magazines. I wrote an article about open concept vet hospitals.
Okay. What is
Yeah.
that? Tell me what that is.
So it's a model of practicing medicine that's quite uncommon in Canada, but it's becoming more popular in the States, where instead of only seeing clients in the exam room and then taking the cat to the back, in that model of practicing medicine, the client goes with the cat or dog to the back, the treatment room, even the surgery room. So they get to see almost every single step that's involved with their pet's care. And it's not necessarily like the layout of the clinic. So it doesn't have to be like an open concept. It doesn't have to be one big room, although some of the open concept vet hospitals do have one big room. But it's the idea that the pet parents follow the pets the whole way, just like in pediatric medicine.
Did you practice like that in the States when you were there?
I didn't.
No. Okay.
So I learned about this style of medicine from the editor of the magazine, actually.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think it's like veg is the kind of
yes,
for that.
Yeah, exactly.
As an emerge hospital. I have such mixed feelings about it. I mean, what do you think about it? What do you think the pros and cons are?
It can be positive if there are guidelines set in place. So you do need boundaries. Otherwise people will show up with 10 family members and people will go on their phone while they're in the hospital and interrupt other people. And so you do need guidelines and you need people chaperoning these clients. You also need safety precautions in place, like because there's controlled drugs, there's other animals that can bite. You do have to plan ahead, where you can't just let everybody in the back, without any planning.
Okay.
Yeah.
I graduated a very long time ago. I graduated in 1996, and things weren't intentionally open concept, but they kind of were at the time. Like in certain instances, like if you had an emergency, there wasn't emergency clinics where I was. So if you had an emergency, like I can remember doing a C-section, clients were in the back because someone had to take puppies, like someone had to resuscitate puppies. So that's what they were doing. And I guess it was open concept, but it was not by any plan. It just was like open. And I had mixed feelings about that. I think your idea of having, or maybe it's Vedge's idea, but like having some boundaries, because I also know like when I've had clients back visiting when their pet's hospitalized, they're often really distracted with who's that dog and what's wrong with him. And they want to like put their fingers in everyone's cage and stuff, and like for safety, but also just for confidentiality, like they can't really be doing that. But from the perspective of clients being scared, where's my dog? What's happening to my dog? What are you doing to my dog? And some of those pets are actually going to be quieter and less stressed if their owner wants to sit in the kennel with them. Yeah, maybe they'll help. They could help take them outside to go pee. And so I don't know. I guess the jury's out, but I know that's definitely the veg model. It's interesting what they're doing for sure.
Clients get to sleep there overnight and spend time with their pets.
Oh, they sleep there too. Okay. I've had clients ask me that. Not a lot of clients, but a certain percentage of my clients will say, can I sleep here? And not really understand why they can't. But I think it's that we're not really set up for it. I think if you set up the whole hospital, like that's the culture, that's the way it is. Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I know whenever people say that to me, I'm kind of like, I get it. Because if it was me in that position and I was scared and it was my dog that was sick, I might want to do that. So yeah. It makes sense. All right. So how much stand-up are you doing? I know you said you're really busy. Is it something you think you're going to keep doing? Was it something to like, help you learn a skill, or do you think it's something you want to continue with?
So I've taken 2 courses and each course had a show, and I have 2 fundraising shows coming up. I think I've caught the stand-up comedy bug too.
Yeah, it happens for sure. What are you raising money for, the shows that you're doing for fundraising?
The first one is for my stand-up comedy classmates' science education music album.
Okay.
So she wrote a lot of songs about science. The second one is in September, and it's going to be for like Indigenous causes, because that's it. Like, September is the month when we raise awareness for Indigenous causes.
Okay. That's awesome. And are those people that you've connected with in the comedy community, or?
Yes. Yeah. Both of them are my classmates.
Okay. I was wondering if it was going to be stuff for animals, but maybe that'll also come down the road.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
And then how do you think, or maybe you do or don't, like when you're speaking as a stand-up comedian, are you talking about being a veterinarian? Are you keeping it separate? Is that 2 different things for you?
I do talk about being a veterinarian. In one of my sets, I did not reveal that I'm a veterinarian until the very end because it was the punchline. So one set I started off by saying that I'm a veterinarian. Another set I did, I actually kept it a secret until the very end so I could surprise people.
So you're not keeping it, because I don't know, when I first started, I had them as very separate. I never said I was a vet, but then I just found it was too hard because I think for a lot of veterinarians, it's such a core part of our identity of being with animals. And
Exactly.
yeah, it's hard to not even mention it, I found.
Yeah. And most of my jokes are animal themed.
Okay. And then I mean, I don't know what, if it's based on what you've learned or what works for you, but what's your writing process when you're writing jokes or even writing your book? How are you doing that when you sit down to write a set?
I have to say the first draft can be dramatically different from the last draft. So usually takes me like 6 or 7 drafts to get to the final set. And I write most of the jokes at home, and then I meet up with my stand-up comedy classmates, and I think of it as like polishing. Like, so like I'll do like the rough work at home, and then thankfully I have classmates that I feel safe enough and comfortable enough around that, I can bounce my ideas off of them.
Awesome. And then are you doing open mics in Vancouver? What's the scene like there?
I haven't done any open mics. So one of the challenges with stand-up comedy here in Vancouver, at least, is that a lot of the shows start late at night and ends pretty late. Late as in the show starts at 9 and then is over at 11. And when you have to work the next day, it's hard.
I definitely can feel that. I have similar challenges. I'm much older than you. I want there to be like matinees, a lot of matinees. That would suit me. I'm like, how about something matinee comedy? Was anyone want to do that? That would be perfect. Yeah. So it sounds like you love veterinary medicine, but you're also, I don't know, veering into like education for people.
Exactly.
Is that something you want to pursue more, or kind of where do you see? I love your portfolio career, but where do you see it going in the future?
So when I first graduated, it was all about treating pets, diagnosing and treating pets. And don't get me wrong, I still do that, but I see more and more that there's so many things that could have been prevented in the first place. And I want to try to prevent some of those things, either behavioral issues or health issues. There's so many things, like so many people just free feed their cats. I had someone tell me, let me back up a bit. So I have to, inform her that her cat's overweight. And she's like, what? My cat's overweight? And then I asked her like, oh, how much dry food are you feeding? And she told me, all you can eat. And I was thinking to myself, like, why are you surprised that your cat's overweight when you feed your cat a buffet, like all you can eat buffet every night?
I think this, this is controversial. You could tell me what you think, but I think a lot of the indoor cats are overweight. A lot of them have urinary problems, diabetes. And I don't know, in the Vancouver, you can't just let them outside, but I do think they seem to be happier when they're outside, but then people get mad about the birds. So, there's a lot of competing issues at play, but I do think the indoor cats need more than just free feeding and you're just in a house. They need stimulation. They need things to do. They need exercise.
Well, when I worked at a cat clinic, I felt like that's all I saw, back to back, overweight, geriatric cats with arthritis that weren't getting treated for the arthritis. They were also fractious. It was just like appointment after appointment after appointment of me having to talk about diet, restricting food, not free feeding, increasing water intake because a lot of cats aren't drinking enough water, introducing food puzzles so that there's mental stimulation and more exercise. And people are like, what? Food puzzles? I thought those were only for dogs. I'm like, no, cats can be just as smart. There are cat food puzzles. And they're like, I thought they were only for treats. I'm like, you can put kibbles in it too, or wet food, depending on the design. There's so many types of cat puzzles now, food puzzles.
Okay, well, that's cool. Yeah. No, I love that. I think there is a lot. I think things that we take for granted as veterinarians, like people just don't know. I just posted on Instagram, this dog ate a corn cob, and I went and did emergency surgery on the dog yesterday. And so many people are grilling in the park, and they just check corn cobs. Like, they're like, oh, it's fine, gradable. I'm like, it's a foreign body. They just put butter all over. It's so hard. Like, it's heartbreaking. Like, this client was just so beside himself because his dog was suffering. It was a sudden expense. His dog has to have emergency surgery. And it's just like, he didn't even feed the dog corn. He didn't have corn. Like, he doesn't even know where the dog got the corn cob. And I just think it happens so much. And it's just such a silly thing that people would just put the corn in the garbage. And it's such a common emergency that we just call it a corn cob foreign body. That's how often it happens.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the corn cob could be in there for months. Like, I saw a dog a couple of years ago where there was a corn cob in there. We found it in the winter when, summertime is when mostly corn cobs, right? So like it had been there for months and it smelled so bad when they took it out. Anyways, another thing that people don't do is they don't brush their pet's teeth. And then they get surprised, like, what? Like, my pet has dental disease? Like, I didn't know you had to brush your pet's teeth. I'm like, if you didn't brush your pet's teeth, your own teeth, if you don't brush your own teeth for 18 years, can you imagine how dirty and smelly and painful your teeth would be?
All right. Well, I love it. I love that you're tackling, like, I don't know. I feel like there are like husbandry issues or things that I think you're going to help a lot of people. So kudos to you for like jumping on that and trying to
Thank
educate the
you.
public. I think you're going to do really well with that. I have a couple more questions I wanted to ask you. And I don't know. I think your generation does the portfolio career. So it's like locum, creative pursuits. Like it's kind of like writing, like all these different things. But if you could do comedy full time, I know you're early on, but if you imagine you could do comedy full time, you make the same amount of money, maybe more. I don't know, but the same amount of money, same amount of work. Would you leave veterinary medicine, or would you continue to try to balance all your pursuits of your writing and your speaking and your comedy and being a locum veterinarian?
Right now, I would say part-time for both, unless I stop enjoying veterinary medicine or unless I stop being a good veterinarian.
I always ask people to tell me that because I'm worried I'm going to get old and senile. I keep practicing. I'm like,
Oh,
could someone just let me know? Like if I'm losing my edge, I want to go out like Gretzky, right? You want to go out on top?
mhm.
Yeah. All right. Okay. No, I like it. I
Or maybe
also,
when the balancing becomes too hard. Yeah, I can imagine it'd
yeah.
be hard to balance after a while.
Yeah. Okay. But right now you're happy kind
Yeah.
of doing everything. I do think I think the millennials are better at doing that. Maybe at like sort of being, oh no, I can be many things. I don't have to be one thing, which is why millennials are my favorite generation.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes. They're my fave. Okay. I have one more
Don't hear
question.
that very often. Yeah.
Don't? Oh no, absolutely my fave. 100%.
Yeah.
I'm Gen X, not my fave. Gen Z, sorry, also not my fave. Millennials are like just right. That's what I think. It's like
Aw.
Goldilocks in the three generations. We're not going to talk about boomers right now, but the
Mhm.
three working generations, millennials are just right
Mhm.
as far as I'm concerned. I love them. All right. The last question on the podcast, super important. I know you've listened. So hopefully you have a good invitation ready. We're trying to get Ken Jung to come on the podcast. He is the ultimate co-medicine guest. So now you're not speaking to me. You're not speaking to our listeners. Can you just please invite Ken Jung to come and be a guest on co-medicine?
Dr. Ken Jung, please be a special guest on this podcast. We all want to hear about how you're able to do comedy and medicine at the same time. I read that you did stand up and improv while you were in medical school and while you were doing your residency. How?
How can we want to know? All right. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you for being organized and prepared. And thank you so much for being on this podcast. It's been really great to meet you online and also in person. I'm just excited to see what you're going to do with everything.
Thank you for having me.
And that wraps up another episode of Co-Medicine. Thank you so much for listening. It is great having you here. If you have been listening to Co-Medicine from the beginning, thank you. If you're new to Co-Medicine, thank you and welcome to our Co-Medicine community. It is wonderful to have you here. I want to just give a shout out to Mark Edwards, who wrote the music for Co-Medicine. He's a comedian, an actor, a musician. He's going to be famous, you guys. And then you'll be like, is that the same Mark Edwards? And I'll be like, yeah. He's my friend, you guys. I know him. And he wrote the song. He's amazing. Also, big shout out to Dustin Bays. Thank you for editing the show and producing it. I appreciate you because I don't know how to do that stuff and I don't want to learn. Yes, it's willful ignorance, I think, at this point, but I'm so glad Dustin is here with me, helping me out with the show. And thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please like it, share it, do all the things, review it. If you're a sponsor or a potential sponsor, call me. That would be great. If you don't like the show, I don't know why you're still here.